Only 11 students graduated from the demanding 2-year course, which saw more than 40 start. Their studies prepare them to analyse, design and implement working programs with no illusions about the competitive jungle of employment.
It's a difficult course. The standards are really high, but there's no intentions of dropping the standards. They'll stay as high as they are. The dropout rate will be compensated next year by the part-timers who graduate.
Their major project has been designing a system for the Newcastle Amateur Athletics Association. The work took 6 months and 600 hours to complete. It cuts the amount of clerical work done by organisers and streamlines the running of events.
The system that we've designed shows that we have experience in writing programs for people outside of just an institution.
Employer groups had a close look at the package and met graduates keen for a start in the business.
The work's really interesting. It's difficult, but it's interesting, and the money is really good.
Employer input is important to the course and job prospects are good, with some graduates already being placed.
The demand in Canberra and Sydney is exceptionally high for our sort of workers. Newcastle still has good prospects and getting better all the time.
Two weeks ago, the state government announced that the cultivation of Pacific oysters in Port Stephens would be allowed reluctantly. For the Shellfish Association, which has been lobbying for years for the oysters to be sold legally, the decision was good news. But the bad news is that the legalisation means Port Stephens oysters can't be transferred elsewhere for fear of spreading what's seen as a rogue oyster. For the mainstream oyster farmers group, the move spells the end of the oyster industry. Today they vented their anger at a meeting with officials from the Department of Agriculture and Fisheries.
I've got about guys in the fourth generation here and you're ignoring them.
According to the farmers, continual state government restrictions are slowly draining the lifeblood out of the industry. Last Friday, the department closed Port Stephens in the hope of preventing stock contaminated with the rogue oyster from being taken to other estuaries.
We're coming into the prime season now, and for every week, every day that we're not allowed to move stock, those people's income is going to be ruined.
The farmers claim the oyster industry isn't the only business in Port Stephens which is going to suffer in the next few years. These pictures from New Zealand show colonies of Pacific oysters overrunning beaches.
Anywhere where there's rocky outcrops and perhaps old timbers, once they get a go on and the multiplication factor takes effect, yes, completely out of control. I don't know what the future could hold for the tourism in Port Stephens.
The farmers have been told the decision will not be reversed, but because their livelihoods are at stake, they say they will continue to fight for the removal of the Pacific oyster. Jodie McKay for NBN News.
The Salvation Army is counting the cost of the grim economic climate in the number of toys donated to its Christmas appeal. Early indications are that there just won't be enough gifts to go around. Donations of cash are also desperately needed, though it's recognised that most families have very little spare. Many are battling just to survive.
In fact, the last quarter, comparing with the same quarter last year, there's parts of our welfare services has gone up 125%.
For these families, Christmas is a luxury they cannot afford.
When you try to do a budget with them and take in the regular commitments of housing, food, etc., there's absolutely nothing to spare, and in some cases, if there's something that has cropped up, such as sickness that they haven't expected, they just can't make ends meet.
It's the same story at the Smith family, where volunteers are busy packing festive food parcels. In 1 week alone, they will give away 1,300 more than last year. Their Christmas appeal target is $130,000. So far, only $32,000 has been raised.
The donations are very poor this year, which we anticipated. Of course, everyone seems to be battling, but we do need assistance. We realise that the going's tough, but anyone that can afford to help, we would appreciate it.
These are the 48 committees Alderman Saunders is referring to. Some have served their purpose and are no longer needed, while others have accomplished nothing at all. All up, Alderman Saunders belongs to 17 committees, some of which he admits have no purpose. One of these is the 21st Century Committee, which was established in 1986 with the aim of setting up yet another committee to plan Council's entry into the next century. In the last 4 years, it has never met or reported to Council. While some committee objectives are often vague and meaningless, others are duplicated.
There's a Newcastle Harbour Recreational Boating and Fishing Study Investigation Sunset Committee, and there's also a Recreational Boat and Fishing Sunset Committee. Now there are two committees whose task is exactly the same. We have three different committees whose job is to assess applications under the Hunter Area Assistance Scheme. Three different committees. And that's the sort of duplication there is, and quite frankly, ought not be done.
According to Alderman Saunders, the excessive number of committees not only confuses the public, but also the aldermen.
I've spoken to a few aldermen about it, and those that I've spoken to don't know exactly what committees they're on. And when I'm going through the list that I've got, and I've said to a particular alderman, "You're on that committee," that alderman has said, "Oh, am I?"
It's the wasted time and money which concerns Alderman Saunders.
I've worked out that if only half of these committees met monthly for 2 hours, then that would mean that one officer is almost full-time just in attending committees. Now, if we couldn't, by rationalising these committees, save about $50,000 at least, then I'd be very surprised.
Ironically, Alderman Saunders' request that the number of committees be rationalised was referred to the Future Strategy Committee for further consideration. Jodie McKay for NBN News.
Alderman Nichols was elected unopposed after Councillor Neil McNamara of Singleton decided not to stand.
I believe my 18 months of chairman of Shortland have achieved what the delegates voted me for. That was to bring about an appeasement within the council itself, and I believe that has been done.
Dennis Nichols is the president of Newcastle Trades Hall Council and an organiser for the Amalgamated Metalworkers Union. His election to the Shortland chairmanship came as no surprise to local government observers, as it's understood campaigning among ALP delegates clinched the plum position.
I was grateful. There'd been discussions before, as there always are in these matters, and I was grateful for that support.
The retiring chairman leaves the job with a reputation for sorting out the political infighting which plagued the council before his 18-month term. Councillor McNamara expressed confidence in Dennis Nichols' ability to preserve the harmony which he says prevails. However, Alderman Nichols admits the year ahead will be tough.
This will be a very difficult year. The government have in mind some legislative changes that will affect the electricity supply industry, and of course it will need to be monitored very closely to ensure that the consumers in the area of Shortland County Council's operation receive the best deal possible.
The extensions worth $12.1 million were completed in September and will be officially opened by Premier Nick Greiner on Saturday. But the intensive care ward lies empty, with its specially trained staff deployed to other areas of the hospital. Likewise, the labour ward, with its home-style birthing suites, remains an unworkable showpiece until a second anaesthetist can be found for the hospital.
We're led to believe that generally throughout Australia there is a shortage of anaesthetists. In particular, there's a shortage in New South Wales and the ACT, and it follows also that there is a shortage on the Central Coast.
The hospital has been forced to look overseas, but still to no avail. Though the Central Coast has the second largest birth rate in the state, caesarean births only are possible here. Most women give birth at nearby Gosford Hospital before being transferred to these private facilities, which include prenatal classes in parenting and postnatal discussion groups. The extensions bring the number of beds in the 10-year-old hospital to 130. Rebecca Skinner, NBN News.
Australia's best fighter pilots went to war today. Under the cover of darkness, they guided their FA-18s out of Victoria's East Sail base straight into combat. For the 7 young men attempting to graduate from the Fighter Combat Instructors course, it was to be the fight of their lives.
Red 1, bandit 27 at 5, have another bandit, you 6 o'clock, 5 miles, brake left. Red 2, further bandit 02 at 5 miles, inbound, bandits 09 at 10.
5 months ago, they were hand-picked to undertake the FCI course. Today was their final mission. Operation Pre-Dawn put all the skills they'd honed over the course to the ultimate test. Yesterday, they left for East Sail for their first bombing mission, flying with them 9 crack wingmen, among them 5 pilots already top guns. When they flew out of there this morning, 16 bandits sent in from Williamtown were waiting to intercept them and engage them in their toughest dogfight yet. The 7 then headed for Singleton to drop their 500-pound dummy bombs on a range while under attack from the ground from a contingent from Singleton Army Base. However, low cloud and fog forced the abandonment of the dump. The mission was later completed by the Army. So, still heavy with weaponry, but with the enormous 5-month burden lifted from their shoulders, they flew back home to Williamtown for a 90-minute debriefing and then at last the chance to celebrate.
My capability as a fighter pilot have probably tripled at least. The things I learned about this aircraft in the last 4 months, I'd never known before.
From the ground, fighter training may look like just one big war game, but for these 7 pilots, at times it's been sheer hell. They've spent 20 hours a day, 6 days a week on this course, the object to push them to the limit. But sometimes, they say, it pushed them beyond. The 7 will now help shape Australia's fighter force. If we went to war tomorrow, they'd lead the way. But despite the high profile of the Gulf conflict and the cutting edge they now have, it's a day Flying Officer Mike Pryor hopes will never come.
No one ever wants to go to war. If you find someone that really wants to go to war, they're either lying or there's something wrong with them. We'll train because we want to defend this country, but we train in hope that it'll keep the peace. If we had to go to the Gulf, we'd all go. Because this is the job we've accepted. We're doing it to the best of our ability. If they send us to the Gulf, that's decisions above our level. We would go there and fly to our best.
The gallery has been a 2-year dream for Ken Duncan. Matcham residents have watched it take shape over the past few months, but until now they have never seen inside. This is what they've been waiting for, Ken's latest breathtaking works, together with some of the classics that have spread his fame worldwide. Until now, his work has been seen only in capital cities on travelling exhibitions, some locals going as far as Canberra to see his work. But the gallery is not just to promote his own photographs.
But I wanted to show other leading Australian landscape photographers so that people can get an awareness to photography as an art form.
And art it really is. Early next year, Ken begins a photographic tour of the United States. He anticipates a large market for his work and inflated prices for his limited edition photographs. He is also working on his second book, which will include pictures of some of Australia's most isolated areas.
A lot of shots up in Fraser Island and Daintree, and we're also doing a lot in some very remote areas that people have never seen before.
Ozfire is the region's best hope for honours in this year's Sydney to Hobart. Launched just weeks ago, the crew's been working around the clock to add the rigging and fit out the boat in time for the race. The boat's a Mummery 45. That's a New Zealand design. It's the second only of its kind to ever hit the water. Skipper Doug Coulter admits to having spent $450,000 on the boat so far. For his money, he expects to get a very fast offshore racer.
Well, I think we're probably going to give it our best chance this year. We've had a couple of good results over the last 2 years. With a shade of luck, we might get ourselves a win.
Doug and his 14-man crew expect to be in the top 15 boats home in a trip which will take less than 4 days. The 630 nautical mile classic is often plagued by stormy weather from the south. Despite that, confidence is running high.
Well, hopefully, there's some fast boats this year. There's 5 or 6 maxis and 5 or 6 pocket maxis that are 20 feet and 25 feet longer than we are, so obviously we can't hope to beat them. But I'd be hopeful of being in the first 15 or perhaps 20 boats across the line.
A second local entry is Lake Macquarie yacht New Horizons. The Cavalier 37 is the same type of boat Kay Cotty sailed around the world in her epic adventure. At 11 metres, New Horizons will carry an 8-man crew and 12 sails, including 4 spinnakers. The 6-year-old cruiser racer will be skippered by Central Coast pharmacist Mike Kelleher. He says it's every yachtsman's dream to compete in the Sydney to Hobart.
I think this is the major ocean race in the Australian ocean racing calendar, and it's the race that all yachtsmen aspire to going into, and it's just a major ocean race that everybody who's a yachtsman wants to do.
The third entrant is Mercedes 5, registered with the Tanilba Bay Amateur Sailing Club. Mercedes 5 was built for the 1977 Admiral's Cup and is sailed by its 35-year-old owner, Jeff Barker.
She's the last boat of the Mercedes line. Aluminium, 41 foot 6. Hasn't been raced a lot in Australia actually. It's fairly much a mysterious boat. It's got a lot of mystery associated with, a lot of controversy. But since I've had it and we've been campaigning in Queensland and roundabout, we've had some good results with it, and we feel that given some good conditions we'll go well on the way to Hobart.
A normally serene seaside suburb, the entrance was today awash with sound and colour. Thousands lined the streets for the annual Mardi Gras parade, and the star attraction was 99-year-old Vicky Vickeray. She and 21 slightly younger ladies are vying for the honour of being crowned Mardi Gras Queen. Vicky took the title in 1981, but is less than confident about her chances this time round.
There's such a lot of young ones, I'd like to see one of them.
But she's already won a vote of approval from her rivals.
9 years old, she can do that. Good on her. She's a lady that's lived on Central Coast just about all her life, so I think it's good that she's gone in. Just because she's nearly 100 years old doesn't really make any difference.
The winner will be announced tomorrow. Bruce Mackenzie, NBN News.
The miners were told of the decision to sell last Friday with a price tag of $150 million. Today, the full ramifications of that decision became known. At least 500 jobs are likely to go, with the Wabba and Newvale mines the most precarious. They're being sold without contracts from the Electricity Commission. The Elcom and Newcom miners found they had the state ALP's full support. Opposition leader Bob Carr said the fire sale would become an election issue.
The real value of these mines is likely to be something like $700 million. Mr Griner's flogging them off for a fraction of their real value. It is a major betrayal of the public interest.
He said the Newstand mine alone was worth $170 million. He also claimed the sale would push up electricity prices, and he had his own option to put forward.
I'd separate them from Elcom management and I'd run them commercially.
The meeting heard that most mines to be sold were operating efficiently, winning contracts of up to 15 years against private tenderers. The miners began their fight by staying out for a further 24 hours. Then they planned to stop private tendered coal coming into Vales Point and Eraring power stations. The United Miners Federation said it could become one of the biggest battles in mining history.
Initially we have the legal challenge, which we think that should be successful. That will stop the state government from proceeding as quickly as what they planned with the sale. The whole fight is very, very significant. It is a challenge, and that we are prepared to fight until the end.
The course was looking resplendent after an early morning drenching. 248 golfers headed out for a Pro-Am event. More than half were trainee pros eager to make a name for themselves. With an average age of 22, they spend a 3-year apprenticeship with a golf professional. Some will then spread their wings on the contest circuit. It's the same path followed by golfing greats Ian Baker-Finch, Peter Senior and Brett Ogle. But in the meantime, it's hard work with little pay. A welcome incentive was the chance to win a Closter Ford Capri for sinking a hole-in-one on the 14th.
It would be a shot of a lifetime, I think. Might have a bit of trouble getting into it, but apart from that, I'd love to take it back to Melbourne with me.
Jeff Ross of Melbourne went close, but the car remained unclaimed. Local district women's champ Gail Gannon and trainee of the year Mark Trickle from Queensland teed off with amateurs. Today's round was a warm-up to the trainee tournament, which gets underway tomorrow, with the field halved by Thursday to play for a $30,000 purse and prizes.
A meeting last night was told that the complex has only about 1,000 to 1,300 car parking spaces, far short of the number needed when the hospital becomes fully operational. A plan to charge a fee for parking within the grounds was not thought a good idea by nearby residents. They fear this will encourage people to park in nearby streets to avoid the payment. The meeting was also told that a consultant's report suggests the entry road to the new complex is inadequate. The hospital's general superintendent said he'd investigate this aspect.